Today is June 17th, 2021. This is Gary Lamel. I am calling to order the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs regular monthly meeting, and would ask Commissioner Blackwood to read the notice of meeting statement.
A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of June 17th, 2021 Commission meeting was distributed June 15th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested information. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities, Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you very much. Would want to welcome everybody today for the first time in a lot of months. We actually have some individuals in the audience. It looks like it's staff primarily, but as is keeping with our usual practice, when we actually have an audience, I am going to ask those who are here to introduce themselves. Pat, if we could just start with you and just work our way back through the room. Thank you.
Pat Merely, DDSN.
We'll work across. So, yeah.
Robert Murray, DDSN. Deborah Butler, DDSN. Tim Park, DDSN. Mike Lee, DDSN. Jacob Flowers, DDSN.
I think, Jacob, this is your first meeting with us, right?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Welcome. Nice to have you here. The first item is the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any proposed changes, amendments, or corrections to the agenda as proposed? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. And if it's not clear, Commissioner Thomas is going to be joining us in just a little bit, but we do have a quorum of 5 here, so we're okay. We're expecting Gary?
Yes, he said he'd be a few minutes
Okay,
late.
got it. Okay, so we're expecting our other 2 commission members to join us. The first item on the agenda is the invocation, and would call again upon Commissioner Blackwood.
Dear Heavenly Father, guide our decisions so we can do your work for in due season, and that we never lose heart of our commitment to serve the clients of DDSN and the families of South Carolina. Guide us in this meeting and throughout 2021 so that the decisions today will benefit all clients well into the future. God commands us to love each other and to be the light in the dark, in a dark world that is filled with confusion and evil intentions. We ask for your grace and love to strengthen our communities and bless all the providers serving those in their care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Very good.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of prior commission meeting minutes. There are 3, the minutes from the May 20th regular commission meeting, and then 2 special called meetings, May 27th and June 10th. I believe we can take these as a group unless there's any objection to that. Does anyone have any proposed changes, amendments, or corrections to any of the minutes as proposed?
No.
Not really, except I wanted to clarify the main minutes, one part of the main minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if it's correct like it is or not. I'm just asking. It says that the day program loses $1.5 million. I mean, that's collectively, right? Not all, each provider is not losing $1.5 million.
Across the state.
Okay, well then it should say collectively and not, because it looks like now like every one of them is losing that. So it should use the word collectively, and we should look into that in more detail at another meeting. But because it says we're going to bring that back up, and when we do, we need to do more detail about why that is, because we have a plan to prevent that from last
Which
June.
meeting date, which meeting, May meeting are you talking about?
The meeting, the main meeting we had last month.
The commission? Okay.
Yeah.
And so
It's under,
just wanted to read.
it's not marked on my sheet, but it's on this sheet because it's on, this is the one I just picked up this morning, but it's,
What page?
that's a good question because it's not marked on the sheet.
Right, the pages are at the top, you know. Trying to see which
It says
section you
that
were
the-
under so I could read the.
It says the
entire
day
sentence.
program is losing,
Right.
and it should say collectively. It implies that everyone loses $1.5 million a week. And they don't. It's under Mr. Malley's department here.
Okay, so it would have been under the financial update.
I'm sorry, I didn't mark it on this thing.
That's okay. I just was trying to read the
Yeah, I'm not
entire
seeing,
sentence so that
I'm
I
not
could.
seeing it in the actual minutes. Are you saying it's on the sheet that was accompanying the minutes?
I'm saying it was in the minutes of this last meeting before this one.
Okay.
Look at, see if I have it on here. I have it on the truck.
Right. Right, which is not, that's not what we're talking about.
Look at it. The one I have it marked on is in my truck right now. So
Well, let's,
So we could just say that we'll locate that specific item on our agenda, on the meeting minutes, make that amendment or
I'll
amend it
correct-
to say that, and then we can just approve that.
I can show it to
Christie.
Christie later.
So- well, here's what I would suggest. We can entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended to reflect that the deficit is statewide, not each provider, which is your concern.
That's right.
I think we can still approve it and then just have that amended. So we entertain a motion,
No,
Commissioner.
not a motion yet.
Okay.
In the regular meeting,
Yes, sir.
under A, financial audit and planning, it doesn't state, said it was recommended. It was, excuse me,
Yes, sir.
it was recommended that the agency not conduct. Who made the recommendation? Was that the state auditor?
Yes.
Then we need to so state that.
Okay.
It just,
So state that we did not. That was so state that we didn't, that the state, auditor recommended we not do a financial audit, correct?
Yes, correct, because it just said it was recommended. It didn't say whom.
Okay. So let's take those as individuals. So Commissioner Miller is making a recommendation to amend on page 3 under financial audit planning, where it says it was recommended, to amend that to change the it to the state auditor recommended.
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
that is your motion, Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Do we have a second to that?
second, Blackwood.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then secondarily to that, Commissioner Malfris wanted to make a motion, correct me if I'm wrong in stating this,
Go ahead.
that with regard to the at-home services deficit, that the $1 million deficit was statewide, not per provider.
That's right. It was collectively. It should say collectively.
Collectively,
$1.5 million. I think it's $1.5 million. It says.
And to instruct staff to find where that is and make sure that that's correct in the minute.
Right, which I'll fix before I leave here today.
Okay. So that's your motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of that? And I think,
And I'm sorry I don't have it on me right now, but I won't make that mistake again.
and our esteemed executive director has found it on page 7, subsection C. It says providers are losing approximately $1.5 million a month. And so the amendment would be to insert the word providers collectively are losing.
Yeah, approximately $1.5 million.
Correct.
Yes,
So we're inserting the word collectively.
right, because there's a lot more than one provider
Sure.
that are losing that kind of money. So it
Okay.
makes a lot of difference to me.
All right. So that amendment, as stated, All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any
Aye.
opposed? With those amendments done, any other motions with regard to the minutes?
No, except to say that I apologize, it took that long to find my thing, and I will not make that mistake again.
Not a problem. Okay, would then entertain a motion to approve the minutes of all three meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion with regard to that? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, guys. All right, next item is commissioner updates, starting from Commissioner Miller. We'll work around the table. Any updates, sir?
I don't have it.
I just wanted to mention that, a college that I've mentioned in Wisconsin, Shepherd's College in Wisconsin, had a, wonderful graduation that I watched online because somebody that I know, or somebody that I know who knows somebody actually graduated from there. And I just wanted to commend them for having a formal graduation and graduating 20 some odd people in a very difficult time of COVID and all that sort of thing. And that it's a wonderful school for anybody that wants to look into it for practical education for those with disabilities.
No update.
So I am going to brag on York County just a little bit. I had the pleasure of attending a presentation at Miracle Park earlier this month. For those of you who don't know, Miracle Park is the cutting edge, all-inclusive recreational facility that is being built via cooperation of the city of Rock Hill, Max Abilities, and the York County Disabilities Foundation. This facility is really, it is unique and is the only one of its type in the world. Is drawing worldwide interest in press and interest in events, and it's in the process of being constructed. So the Carolina Panthers hosted an event at the park where the Panthers Foundation made a $200,000 donation to the park. And then on top of that, the Tepper Family Foundation, the owners of the Panthers, came in and gave an additional $500,000. So the total donation that they got for the park was $700,000, which is just tremendous. The park it's coming together. The buildings are up. The fields are starting to come together. It will have an opening later this year that was an official date. So it's on track. This project was the reason why Rock Hill was given the Silver Palmetto Award a couple of years ago, because it was such a cutting edge thing and how much they've donated. To see this project go from a muddy pit to where it is now and to get these kinds of donations is incredible. And we expect that it is going to draw worldwide interest as far as a project that will really be a model. So I just wanted to brag on Rock Hill and commend Rock Hill, commend the Disabilities Foundation, commend Max Abilities that has provided a huge amount of work on this, and just thank the Panthers and the Tepper family for making that donation for us. It was really just stunning. We didn't expect it was going to be that big. So it was tremendous. So that's my update.
Let me just say one last thing. Happy birthday to Christy. And the fact that she has done a wonderful job for us since she's been here for the last, how long have you been here now exactly? Tell us all. 8 months, almost a year.
And thank you for everything that you do for us. Take excellent care of us. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public input. We have one call-in public input today, and that is Jerry Mize of the Oconee Board of Disabilities and Special Needs. Do we have him on cell?
Mr. Mize, can you hear us?
I can.
Jerry, this is Gary Lamel.
Hey, Gary.
We'll go ahead and recognize you for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me good enough. Let me turn my thing down here. Hold on just a second. Okay. So, I am Jerry Mize. I'm the executive director of the Oconee DSN board. And I want to thank you for giving me the time today to speak with you. And for a couple of you that know me, I'm not complaining today. So I hope that'll, put your mind at ease. Actually, I'm speaking as a member of the South Carolina Disability Service Providers Coalition. And my purpose today is to give you some history of the coalition, because there's some new commission members, and we just felt like it was a time to sort of give a history lesson. So to start, in 2012, several providers were asked by Tony Keck, who was the Director of Health and Human Services, to meet and begin discussions about several topics of interest. DDSN staff also attended these meetings. Some of the topics discussed were ICF rates, case management rates, transportation costs for day programs, and direct billing. And direct billing, has been a huge topic, and we're doing fee for service, and we appreciate the commission, pushing that. So now we are doing fee for service, which is akin to direct billing. We're doing it for some of our programs now. So we thank you for thinking like we think. So we continued to meet regularly for, I think, a few years, until a couple of changes in directors at Health and Human Services. And although those meetings stopped, the initial providers knew that we needed to continue to meet. And at that point, we established the South Carolina Disability Service Providers Coalition, LLC. And by the way, DDSN staff also meet with us on a monthly basis. Some of the first members included former DDSN Director Mary Poole and former DDSN CFO Chris Clark. After all these years, we now have 19 members that represent millions of dollars in revenue and a few thousand employees. So in the future, we will be inviting commissioners to our meetings, and hope that you will see fit to join us. And I was volunteered, by the way, by my peers. Actually, they asked me, and I agreed to be the first of the coalition members to speak to you. So other members will be speaking to you on a regular basis to continue to let you know about the coalition. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. If you have any questions, I'll take them, or I'll say goodbye.
Anybody have any questions, Jerry? All right, Jerry, thank you very much for speaking with us today, to letting us know a little bit more about that organization. And I don't believe that anybody has any questions for you. And I just want to express my appreciation for you staying under the time limit today.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Thank you, others too.
Have a good morning.
Thank you. You too.
That's the end of public input for the day. The next item on the agenda is the commission committee business. First up will be the Finance and Audit Committee. Would recognize Committee Chair Blackwood.
So last month, the Finance and Audit Committee introduced an idea in the form of a report that we'd like to submit every month at this commission meeting, monthly commission meetings, to share, see, and approve financial transactions when they cross the $200,000 threshold set forth in the executive limitation policy for the agency. So last month, we looked at a template report. We shared that with commissioners, and we, of course, got some feedback on it. And we were asked to share in this meeting the report with specific activity that we need to address or update you on. So you can see in your tab, behind tab 3, the report that goes on page 3 and 4. The report, as you might recall, was going to be divided into several sections based on activity from that month. items would appear in each section depending on the activity. So for June contracts, which we're reporting today, there are 3 total that we want to just include in this report to notify the commission, but it doesn't necessarily need a formal vote. And there's 1 item that will require a formal vote, and that is noted in green on your the documents that you've got in your packet. So the 3 items that are just for information only are the first item under A is for direct support professionals. For this one, this contract essentially qualifies vendors to perform the service at a fixed rate, and then DDSN purchases the services at its discretion. So we just included it in here because we discussed it in our meeting, our committee meeting, and we wanted to share that with you that we approved this in that committee meeting. In addition to that one, we also approved the item C, which is the linen services for the Whitten and Midlands Regional Centers. This is a 5-year contract. And the scope of this is, like it says in the details, picking up, cleaning, and delivery of contract-owned linen. So this is for information only purposes. And then the third item that's in blue, that's for information only, is the 4 individuals. We discussed 4 individuals with high needs currently being served at WellPath that we want to switch to Community Options, a different residential provider. So that's included in here as information because it reaches the threshold of 200K or greater, and we wanted to include that in the report to keep you aware of that. So those are the 3 information only items. If anyone has any questions of me on those 3, let me know. Otherwise, we can move to the green item, which is for Family Support Network, which does need a second because it was approved out of commission, but we felt it was one that the commission might want to vote on specifically. So this item, again, is called the Family Support Network. And the way that it works is statewide nonprofits affiliated with the disability organizations submit proposals to DDSN to help provide programs and resources and training on a lot of different topics and variety of needs for our clients that we serve and the people that help support them. And so that is outlined in that section B under a non-service contract over $200,000 or greater. And again, we just need a second on that one because we voted on that specific item in our committee meeting.
You have a second? I will second the motion.
Thank you. Before proceeding to the actual motion, does anybody have any questions about the reporting style? This is the first month that we've seen this particular reporting style, correct?
Yeah, we had a draft of what we were hoping to, we thought it would be a good, Pat provided to us some suggestions on, ways to categorize it, ways to make it easily digestible and easy for the commission to quickly review the contract items and that we've asked to see in clarity and in information. And so this is the first month that we are putting through actual contracts for approval or for information only, information only. So yes, this is the first time.
So since this is the first time we're seeing this report, everybody feeling good about it, how it looks, how it's presented? Does anybody have any concerns or complaints with regard to the presentation? And so with regard to that, as it comes out of the Finance Committee, the only thing that we're voting on is the one motion, or is there a motion to adopt the whole report?
We stated in the last meeting minutes that we wanted to, there was a motion that we revised the proposed draft procedures to include the fact that these contracts approved by subcommittee will be presented to the full commission, which is the green highlighting that we've done for today. And there was an item that said that we that it was asked that we put the amended procedure in place for the next subcommittee meeting, which is what we did, and then actually vote on the procedure at the next committee meeting, commission meeting, which would be today. So to your point, we do need to
Vote to approve.
this this new procedure and report that we would like to use going forward to help the commission understand all the contracts, what category they fall in, so forth and so on. Which ones, you know, we felt were didn't necessarily need to be voted on by the full commission because of just the I guess routine linen, for example, purchase that we didn't think that we wanted to try to vote on every single thing that we look at in a subcommittee meeting, but we wanted to report that we did look at these things. So
Did the committee vote on the policy as far as making a recommendation, or do we need a full brand new motion on this?
I would think that we need two different motions, one to say that we're approving the report and the second one to say that we're approving what's in it. Because we didn't, I don't think, made a formal motion for either one of those, right?
Yeah, we definitely have the second one.
Right, but I think, yeah.
Would then entertain a motion to approve the format and procedure behind this report that was adopted by Finance and Audit Committee.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to table the first motion though, in order to move on to a second motion? Because we have a motion open on the floor.
Yeah, but if we want
Okay,
to.
I'll table our motion
Yeah,
then.
we have a motion to table that because technically we can't
Okay.
vote on it until we
Okay,
approve the procedure.
okay.
So is there any opposition to tabling the vote on the Family Support Network matter at this point in time? Can we get to it?
Yeah,
Okay. So we're going to table that for a moment.
Yeah.
To move on to the approval of the actual procedure itself. Do we have a motion to approve the report and the procedure as outlined just a moment ago by Commissioner Blackwood?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or concerns about that procedure? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then that procedure and that reporting style is approved. So to then
Now.
would then go and remove from the table the prior motion
Right.
to approve the contract regarding the Family Support Networks, correct?
Correct.
And we
And
have
a
a
second.
we have a motion and a second with
Correct.
regard to that already.
Yeah.
Any further discussion regarding the approval of that particular contract? Or I guess, is it one contract, or I guess potentially it could be more than one would it be appropriate to say it's a contract, Pat, or is it just an expenditure?
I think it's multiple contracts.
Right. Is, right. Okay. So I'm going to call it a motion to review this expenditure because it could potentially be more than one grant / contract. Is everybody good with that?
Right.
Any further discussion about that expenditure? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. And our thanks to staff and the committee for working up that procedure. I think that's going to be a really good one for us to keep an eye on going forward. Thank you very much for working on that.
Yeah, that is a good job.
So the next item under my committee business is Directive 275-04, 275-06. Both of these are regarding procedures for implementation of DDSN audit policy for both the boards as well as contracted service providers. So there's two. And as you might recall, we had an earlier draft 1 or 2 commission meetings ago. It was available for comment. We received a good bit of comment on those 2 directives from both providers and CPAs. And in our committee meeting, we went through, discussed the ones that we wanted to basically take, and ones that we didn't feel were necessarily good to change in terms of how we drafted it and what we wanted it, how we wanted it to read. And so we are today needing a second on both of those directives. And again, we tried to remove through some of the input any unnecessary burdens on providers and feel that this is a fair and reasonable directive to approve. And so we approved it. So today is just second.
So when you said a second, did the committee approve it?
Mm-hmm.
So we typically treat coming out of committee as a motion and a second. So
Okay,
we don't
gotcha,
need a
gotcha,
second. Unless there was
Yeah.
something specific about it that
No,
felt like we need. Okay.
no, sorry for
All right.
that.
So the committee has approved both of these.
Yes, yes.
So taking them in turn, 27504DD with regard to the DSN boards, we have a motion and a second to approve that as presented. Do we have any further discussion or questions regarding that? Hearing none, would entertain a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, 27504DD is approved. Moving on to 27506DD. Again, coming out of committee, that's a motion and a second. Any further discussion with regard to this proposal? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, that is also approved. Anything further from the Finance and Audit Committee today?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Blackwood.
Mhm.
Next item on the agenda is the Policy Committee. Would recognize Commissioner Malparas as committee chair.
Thank you, sir. I think we're under section 4 now for what I'm going through here. The first item on our agenda for the policy committee is the outside employment policy. And forgive me for reading this, but I'm going to, because some people have a little bit of misunderstanding about this policy, so I'm going to read what is written here. The purpose of this directive is to state the guidelines for DDSN employees will request and obtain approval for outside employment, where outside employment creates an appearance of impropriety, conflict of interest, or interferes with the employee's ability to perform DDSN duties. DDSN maintains the authority to disapprove such outside employment, withdraw approval for such outside employment, or take appropriate action upon and including termination. There is several. The general counsel is continuing to review this policy, and based on some comments that we received on a 5-day deadline that we gave, although we didn't really need to give any public comment on this policy, we didn't think, but we gave 5 days anyway, and got some comments, and so we are continuing to the general counsel is continuing to review those comments, and based on that time today, I am asking and recommending that strongly recommending that we put this directive off for another month, and the policy committee see it again based on the comments that were received.
If there's no recommendation or vote coming out of the policy.
Okay. The next one, it relates to
And I'm sorry, Mayor, my mic wasn't on, so I don't know if that got done. So we're just going to treat that as an informational item and move on without any sort of votes or motion with regard to that. I apologize, Barry, my mic wasn't on.
Sorry. The next item I'm gonna let Susan do for us. It's, relates to, well, actually, I can do this one. This relates to employment first, and the committee was informed on June 8th that the directive was posted for external review and for public comment. There was no comment, so we're asking that the employment first contract be, as a motion and a second come out of committee, to be approved.
Thank you. So we will treat that as a motion and a second then to approve. Does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding the employment first proposal? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that policy is approved.
The next item on our agenda is 36715 DD, which is a mobile device security policy, and that is recommended to be marked obsolete, but I'm gonna let Susan talk a little bit more about that one, because that one is better for her, and so is the next one that we're doing. So she's gonna do both of these.
Thanks, Susan.
Good morning. So these next two items, the 36715 and 36717, the request is to mark both of these obsolete because they were previously combined into that master information security directive where we took 15 documents, reorganized them, compiled into one. So in the process of reconciling all of the work that's been done on all the directives and standards and policies through the year, we discovered that those two fell off the list and they just needed to be marked obsolete at that time, and were not.
And did the policy committee have a vote on those?
Yeah, we approved that they would be marked obsolete. Yes.
Okay, so coming out of policy committee, we'll treat those as a motion and a second. So with regard to 36715 DD, any questions or concerns? All in favor of the motion to mark obsolete, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that will be marked as obsolete as recommended by the committee. Moving on to 36717 DD, with regard to the motion to mark obsolete, do you want to have any questions or concerns? Hearing none, then all in favor of the motion to mark obsolete, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Hearing none, then that motion to mark obsolete is approved. Thank you, Susan. And then any additional committee updates?
There is one that we want to give, which I'm going to let Susan also give the details of, but it relates to a summary of the work that the committee has done this past year, and we would, for the record, like to indicate that.
Thank you, Susan.
Chair, I'll be brief. And just on behalf of staff, I just want to thank the committees and the commission for all the great work that's been done in coordination with policy committee. And of course, finance and audit committee regarding the directives and standards and policies that have gone through the fiscal year 21 process. So the goal was, first of all, there were 180 documents to be reviewed over 4 years, which puts us at a goal of 45 per year. So just a framework there to think about. Completed to date, we're 53. So that's 118% of the goal. 18 of those documents were completed from the original projected fiscal year 21 list, which again, we updated. We learned a lot this year about what you project might not be what you actually do because you've got to add and replace. So that flexibility was really important. So 35 documents were additions to the list to complete that 18 plus 35 to 53. We currently have 13 total additional pending that are within staff for review. And that puts us at a 66 total projected completion in fiscal year 21. If we can achieve that, that'd be 147% of the goal. So we kind of have to think about that moving forward to try to keep it about 45 a year to get through your 4-year cycle at a minimum. So some years it might not be as many, but some of these directives and things we've looked at multiple times because the system is kind of an iterative process. We kind of adjust and learn as we go. So also just a note, in the second half of the fiscal year, staff recommended deferral of 7 documents to fiscal year 22. Again, that flexibility of movement due to workload and kind of staffing changes and assignments, it was necessary to refer those over. So that's just kind of an update of the fiscal year 21 work that was done. Again, thank you so much. And then just one additional item, just for your awareness, we do have one directive out for external review right now. It's 36801 DD. Individual Service Delivery Records Management. So it really talks about the retention and necessary requirements for keeping records on file and such. So that will come, that external review period will end June 21st, and then it's projected that that would come to the next commission meeting July 15th. That's all I have to say.
Any questions for Susan regarding that?
I just want to say thank you, Susan, too, for your hard work in this regard, and that we are very thankful for the flexibility that the committee has had to work on the things that are necessary, and we'll continue to do that. We are very concerned about things that are necessary that pop up at times that need to be worked on, and we will clearly do that, and are eager to do that anytime is necessary. So thank you very much for everything.
Absolutely. And our thanks to the policy committee and to staff for working so hard and doing 147% of our goal.
It's not easy to do, but we are thankful.
Yes, it's great. Okay. Anything further from the policy committee?
Nothing.
Okay.
This time, thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is going to be my favorite committee, the nominating committee that I've been looking forward to for 3 years. I would recognize Commissioner Blackwood.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you credit for funny. That was funny.
Thank you. The nominating committee met on June 16th to discuss the slate of officers, and today I am presenting the slate of the following commissioners. So Commissioner Stephanie Rawlinson for chair, Commissioner Barry Malphris for vice chair, and Commissioner Robin Blackwood for secretary. This concludes my report to you on the election of officers.
Coming out of committee, we'll treat that as a motion in a second. Does anyone want to make any additional nominations for any officer position? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to vote by acclamation as opposed to written ballots. We have a second. All in favor of a vote by acclamation, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that committee is adopted by acclamation. Very much our thanks. And then I would turn the gavel over to Commissioner Rollinson if she actually wants it. I will say as my closing comment, the one thing that I will say that I like doing as commissioner, I didn't have to use that gavel once.
Isn't that nice?
So,
Well, I want you all to know how much I appreciate you having the faith in me to do this job, but I can't do this job just like Gary without you. And I would like to go ahead and appoint my committee chairs, if possible. Worked on this last night a little bit. Legislative Committee, Commissioner Miller will be the chair of that committee. The Finance and Audit Committee, Robin Blackwood would be the chairman, and policy would be Commissioner Malphris. I would like to talk with you, Gary, afterward to figure out what committee you'd like to fit on, and also with Gary and David, and then we'll appoint them at our next meeting officially to the committees after we have the opportunity to talk and kind of see where you would like to fit in that circle. I do want to let you know that I will do my very best to serve you, and I will do my very best to serve this commission and to serve this department. We will put the needs of this department first. But my door is always open. We all have cell phones, and I hope that you all will stay in communication with those you serve, and be ready and willing and able to listen to them and help them, because that's what we're here for, is to help those who need us. And so that's where I stand on things. How about that? All right, let's move on in the agenda to old business. Let's do an update from Mr. Malley on our listening sessions. Rob, that's fine.
Step in on that.
This is
Update on listening.
Rob Burney, correct?
Nick Burney, yeah.
Nick Burney, okay.
I want to thank the commissioners, first of all, for your patience, and as we invent this process, as we get this process started. I know we were given a tight time frame, so I want to thank y'all for being flexible. I always say the best ability is flexibility. So I think we have a good process going forward that we're getting into a good momentum with. I want to also thank Mike Mickey, who none of this would be possible without him. He really he stepped up and invented the whole process of being able to take basically what you have in this room on the road, which is not easy. So I want to thank him. I also want to thank the executive staff for coming out and helping me staff these events. It has been a tremendous help. As we go forward, just an update. We've done 3 listening sessions so far. We did one District 3 in Greenwood with Commissioner Thomas, and we were able to have Commissioner Blackwood join us there. She was in Greenwood for a meeting, and that was great. District 6, we had a great discussion in Manning, the Clarendon board with Commissioner Miller. And yesterday we had our largest in numbers to date. As we move forward, the next 3 are going to be in the large metropolitan areas. So, and they're growing. It was our largest, participation to date online, which was very good, and it was our most diverse one online so far. We've had we were provider heavy on the first 2, executive board heavy on the first 2. More other providers were involved yesterday, and also parents involved. So that was very good. Families, things like that. They were involved as well, and that's growing going forward. I just gave Commissioner Blackwood her list for tomorrow, and I think we have 40 participants so far there for Greenville. So we're thankful that word is getting out and that things are catching on. I do want to say, going forward, we're going to start cataloging these sessions on a page on our website, so that you'll be able to go to the website and be able to watch previous listening sessions. And so you'll be able to see how things go and how the comments are going. So that I think will be helpful to everyone involved, participants and commissioners as well, as we gather information. Another thing that we would be doing, I'm hopeful after tomorrow I will be able to start generating for y'all a summary of each one of these listening sessions, so that we'll have a summary of kind of the notes of what I take notes at each one of these things. So we will have those notes available for all the commissioners as well to review. Things that we're hearing. I just want to touch on some things that we're hearing out there. Providers would tell us the workforce, and we kind of knew that going in, that we were going to hear that. But there are a variety of workforce issues coming out of the pandemic that just are out there, and whatever. There's a variety of specific ideas that have been put out for how to deal with that. You'll see it going forward, and there's some things like I've been buoyed by the specifics of the suggestions as well. You're getting things like telehealth. How does it work into rates as we go forward? and how does we look, and as we look at fee for service, how can we use this money to help with that? How can we use this money to also, you know, we have behaviors coming out of COVID, you know, how can we use that money to deal with some of those things, some of those issues, legacy buildings, that need to be repaired. Yesterday, there were some pleas for respite, help with respite providers, for PCA providers, things like that, and also home modifications that we heard yesterday as well. So it's a variety of things going forward, and like I said, I will catalog all that for you as best I can in the notes for you, and then you'll also be able to look at these sessions as you go forward. And so just want to go over the docket we have coming up tomorrow in Greenville. We have Monday in Charleston with Commissioner Malfris. Commissioner Lamel, you're going to be in Union on Tuesday, and then we will finish up with Chairman Rollinson in Florence. And like I said, I'm pleased with the response as it builds, as the word of these listening sessions get out. We are building up with our participation. So, and pending any questions, that's my report.
Now, let me just ask Pat, do we need to form a committee to actually come up with the plan for this? Is that how we need to do that, or?
We know your last listening session is Wednesday.
Correct.
So on Monday, we're going to start building a menu list of real concrete decisions with ranges.
Okay.
So that when we get to go, so on Thursday, when we shoot you guys, you can see, hey, translating idea into action. Part of that is relying on what other states have done, associations with that, and just kind of procedure to expend funds to meet the needs that we hear. We're going to come up with that menu list. In that list, we're going to try to bring some sort of financial analysis to it, such as like paper. If you do this, it will reduce it by $2 million. If you do this, it will be $3 million. That way you can not only look at the options, you can also look at the relative cost that you want to allocate. I think within that framework, that point, the framework belongs to the commission. Jiggle in place and work with us to jag leads to get it down to the final track.
Do you think we could have something to go to finance for this coming month that you could give to them to review, or how are we do that? Okay, are we? Okay. Okay. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure what the deadline on that was. So it's June 28th. Okay, that's fine. That's good. Thank you. Is there anything we need to do as far as motions regarding this? Anyone? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for your information.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, next we're going to have Ms. Beck on the IDRD waiver renewal update.
If you'll humor me for a second, I've been asked to move the podium up a little because people cannot see the speakers. And I'm not really sure if this thing's gonna flip over or not. Is it okay, Commissioner Miller? I know we're kind of close to you.
It's all right if they don't see me.
Well, I'd be glad to move it back and have them see you and not me for sure. I'm not a fan of the camera.
You go on. This Barry taking up the load.
Stay right there.
It'll be all right. We are.
Just a
Gotta help him out.
symbolic transition thing. Okay. So back on task. Thank you. I just wanted to provide an update on the intellectual disability related disabilities waiver renewal. I'll say IDRD from now on, if that's okay with all of you. I have been coming monthly and providing updates for you all since February on the status of the renewal. And just June 7th, we had another kind of twist and turn, which is a really positive one that's come about. So I just wanted to remind you of a few specifics before I share that. As you may recall, the waiver is due to be, the IDRD waiver renewal is due to come to fruition January 1st, 2022. So the Department of Health and Human Services has been seeking to submit that renewal well in advance of their clock that they're put on with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS. Usually CMS requires a 90-day submission, so DHHS has been trying to get everything done more in a 180-day submission. So that's why we've been kind of pushing with this June, July, kind of get everything sent over. On June 7th, we met with DHHS executive staff and were informed that they would like to renew their efforts to have the list of items that we'd put on hold for a future amendment back in this renewal. So that caused us to do a little bit of grounding and make sure we knew what was due, what still needed to be done, what was in the hands of DHHS. So we're compiling that list. We've had 5 to 6 meetings since the 7th to kind of coordinate all those materials. I know Mr. Maley sent some materials to some commissioners this morning as they were delivered over to DHHS. So you might see some of those, and that's just a coordination with kind of some of these things we need to deliver back to DHHS. So under discussion right now, of course not final, but from that suspended for amendment list that's back on the renewal list, if that makes sense, that development of the independent living skills service, that's a new service. We've talked about that in the past. The e-monitoring, which we think that's electronic monitoring that provides that monthly service for devices of assistive technology that would provide more independence for people. We think that we'll embed that within the current assistive technology service. So that's being worked on. Career preparation, looking at the definitions for those services with some increases in for that service, an increase in the ratio, which would a decrease in the ratio, rather, increasing intensity with a decreased ratio. So where it was a larger group, now it'll be a smaller group. And so therefore, it would require a rate increase to make that feasible. Also, there's been a discussion of waiver case management limits, which is just kind of an administrative burden currently right now with how waiver administration has to approve those and send them over to DHHS. We've also talked about employment services, individual transportation. And so we're looking at that and seeing if that's close enough to ready to push forward on. We're trying to push forward on as many things as possible. Also, of course, the big star item of residential. The discussion has always been that we needed to have more than one rate because we were losing money. So there would be multiple rates of some undefined number. So we've received 2 additional technical assistance sessions since the 7th, kind of narrowing that out, and we're getting even more intense with that right now. And then day services as well, because of the rate issue and increasing requirements, there's some deliberations that need to be done for that. And then DHHS has asked us to entertain the thought of acuity assessments, which is basically a way to establish a person's need and then help that be calibrated to what services they have access to. So assessment always drives the need and the services. So that's under discussion. I just kind of in the process of this meeting saw we've got an update with DHHS later today that popped up. So we'll certainly keep you updated. And I just wanted you all to hear that we kind of changed our path because of requests from DHHS, and it's a good opportunity and we really need to take advantage of it.
Thank you so much. Anyone have any more questions for Ms. Beck?
Consider acuity for what purpose as it relates to I'm not following you say consider acuity.
So it's desirable for states to use something called an acuity assessment. It isn't just one tool, it's usually a package of tools to determine what a person's needs are. In a big long range project, that would fit into kind of individual based budgets, which kind of means what are your needs? How does that fit into this algorithm that's developed from a body of evidence into what budget is matched to that? And so that's kind of the bigger picture with acuity assessments. I think in terms of this, DHHS was interested most in making sure that if there were multiple residential rates, there was some sort of assessment that helped a person file into one of those models. So kind of taking people who are currently in residential services, looking at what their needs are, making sure we have clear definitions for each of those services that match up with rates, and then getting folks assessed and sorted that way.
Are they going to provide this to people, or are they expecting us to help us?
Yeah, so they're expecting us to coordinate development of these decisions with DHHS hand in hand because they hold the authority. So any of the technical assistance we're receiving, they've asked to be right there with us at the table having those discussions.
Or what you
Right. Right.
I mean, we've already got sort of the one that's out there that we would hopefully say high stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of different, so.
You're talking.
This is going to be an important issue, figuring out what acuity testing we're actually.
Yes. Yes.
What sort of timeframe do you think we're going to have? And I had you both on this. This to me is kind of a big deal. You're using a test to determine what kind of service people get. There are going to be people out there who are going to be upset if they lose services because their acuity testing says they don't qualify for X or Y when they have gotten it in the past.
Right.
That's a cycle that I've seen repeatedly.
I know there would be a lot of concern,
Yeah.
and the agency has experience using the supports intensity scale, and then we've stopped doing that, and we have some experience using the HRST, health risk screening tool, which again is just a screener, kind of like if you think of like a vision test or hearing test as a screener, you always have to dig deeper. So nothing should be used independently. In the short run of figuring out something within a couple of weeks, that's really, other states do that kind of building of a body of data, looking at people and what services they're getting now, and then they build that forward with lots of technical assistance. That's a multi-year project, like 4 or 5. So that's really not what we think is on the table. DHHS has just asked us to consider an approach to solve the issue of if you have multiple residential rates, how do you get there? How do you know what to pay the provider if you have multiple rates? So it's a little simpler, but we definitely have to go back and we're very aware that executive limitations requires full presentation of assessments for approval, and that you all would have to be involved in that.
It's always just a hot button issue again. The second we start testing somebody, the second the test comes back and says, you no longer qualify for X service that they may have been getting for years before that under the previous system. That always results in a lot of phone calls to us.
You're correct. And it opens you up. Excuse me. It does open us up for litigation if for some reason somebody lost services or reduced services and it's not well vetted and justified. And so nobody on the DHHS side or the DDSN side is interested in anybody losing services and doing any harm in any of these decisions. So if something looks like it kind of can't be pushed forward, certainly not interested in doing that.
May I ask a question? What, if we do this, you will obviously bring this acuity tool back to us to review, correct? All right. And we'll know if there's going to be pretty much any impact from that at that point, or will we have to wait for the results of all these tests to come back?
So that's a kind of a hard question.
Don't know yet.
So
Okay.
the first part, yes, because executive limitation requires presentation. I don't have the verbiage in my head.
Yeah, I remember.
Presentation of the actual assessment. So we describe it, present it to you, and then you all approve it. Much like Commissioner Miller, when we did the revision of the respite assessment and the personal care assessment, we shared it, talked about it, you all approved it. So kind of like that. So whether it's called an acuity assessment or it's just a service assessment, which is we do a residential habilitation assessment now. If it's something like that, that still would have to follow that procedure.
Okay.
What we're talking about is kind of two different things. We're talking about a short-term
Okay, and then.
Thingy.
Up the long-
And then kind of a long-term rollout development, lots of stakeholder input, making
Okay.
sure everybody feels good, calibration, lots of study of the data. That's a big project. And that kind of thing, if we could multiply hours in the day, maybe you could do that in 2 weeks, but I'm
I
not
was
sure
thinking, I
we
was
could
like,
do
how-
24 times 10,
Yeah.
but we'll do our absolute best to make
Sure.
the best decisions and bring them forward and make sure that DHHS understands
And
them
we
as
will
well.
be able to go to other states and look at what they're using, correct? And-
Yes, through all of the things that we've been working on, through the waiver renewal, again, we've had cost-free technical assistance from CMS contractors who are experts in the field of disabilities. They've been state directors, they've worked with actuaries, or they've worked with CMS. So they're advising us and looking over everything and helping us. We have to make state level decisions,
Yes.
but they're bringing to the table what other states have done. So
Good.
through all those other elements we've already gone through with the waiver renewal, that's the kind of work process that's taking place.
Good.
Although remember DDSN in South Carolina is a little different.
We
So
are.
there's a little bit of extrapolating
Right.
that will have to go, but we're certainly look at other peer work.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Malthus?
One last question, sorry, this is taking too long. And I'm adding to it, so I'm sorry, but did you say something about day program rates that we were investigating, or did you not say anything about that just now?
I said that we're looking into the 4-day services. I'm not sure if I said 4. The day services and the increased requirements will necessitate new rate development from DHHS. So I think Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Blackwood, you were CC'd on some things that were sent over to DHHS this morning from Mr. Maley that included kind of the standards with some changes. So whenever there's kind of like an increased requirement in how a service would be delivered, just under consideration, you would hope if there were additional costs that the rate would also reflect that. So I think DDSN feels there's a justification for a new rate consideration, which will help that problem you all talked about in the minutes section of your meeting today.
That's
And
what
Mr.
I was
Maley,
getting at.
certainly, if he would like to add more, if I haven't said something correct, I'd love for him to correct me.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on. Thank you. Susan.
Thank you.
All right, the next thing is the waiver waiting list update from Ms. Menace.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't think that we're going to be projecting the slides, but you guys should have slides from the presentation in tab 10 of your books. So I'm here to present information about the waiver waiting list as a result of a presentation that I did last month related to some process improvements that we're trying to do with waiver enrollment. All of the information that's in these slides come from enterprise reports. Commissioner LaMelle, you probably remember that you guys used to get enterprise reports every month. They don't come in your commission packet anymore, but we have continued to do them. So that's kind of where this information comes from. The first thing that I wanted to do was talk to you a little bit about the current people who inhabit waiver slots, right? So if you look at your first slide, budgeted slots really mean funded slots, okay? That's the amount of slots in each waiver that we have funding to provide services to people, right? And then enrolled slots are people who are actually enrolled and receiving services. And then the available slots is kind of that gap where we have funding to provide services to people, but for whatever reason, those slots are open right now. And they tend to be open because people are trying to get enrolled, but they haven't been able to get there yet. So that was the reason for the process improvement. Remember, we talked last month about putting people, kind of preparing people so that when they get slots, they would be ready to be enrolled. On the second slide, we look at those people that are pending, which means they're sitting in a waiver slot, but they're not yet getting services. And we have like an average days pending by waiver. The average days pending through the 3 waivers is 343 days, right? So from the time a person gets a slot until they get services, there's this big gap of days. With the new process improvement, we're trying to shrink those days to 60, right? So we kind of capped that 60 days, because we're going to try to do that by preparing people ahead of time. And then every month we look at the average length of time in years that people are waiting for their name to come to the top of the waiting list. So this actually looks for over several years, July of 2015 up until today, right? And each year what the amount of time was. The first column is the community supports waiver. The second column is the head and spinal cord injury waiver. And the third column is the IDRD waiver. So that you can see that within the last several years, we've had an increase in all three waivers and the amount of time that people are on the waiting list. I did want to,
What was the first one you said? 'Cause
the first one is the community supports waiver, which is the capped waiver, has a lot of the same services as the IDRD waiver, but it has kind of an annual cap limit of services. And then the head and spinal cord injury waiver is the second column. As you'll recall, you guys approved a waiting list to start for the head and spinal cord injury waiver about a little over 6 months ago, I think. And now the wait for that waiver is about 5 months. So, and then the last one is the IDRD waiver, which is kind of that big waiver that we've had for a long time that provides residential services and a lot of other things. So the next few slides, I tried to give you guys some information about people that are on the waiting list, because I think it'll help you understand kind of what we have out there. Right as of June 1st, we had 14,241 unduplicated people on a waiver waiting list. Some of those people are on more than one waiting list. Some are on 2, some are actually on 3, although we don't have a lot of crossover between head and spinal cord injury and ID and CS. Most people is the ID and CS waiver waiting list. Of those 14,241 people, 33% of them are adults. And in my world of adults, I'm talking about people over 21 and over and people under 21. And you'll see why in a few minutes. But 33% of the people who are waiting are adults, and 67% of them are children. Of the adults, 52% of them are on more than one list. Right, so they're on CSN ID or that kind of thing. 14% of them are already participating in one of the DDSN waivers. So that would be people who are like participating in that capped CS waiver that are waiting on ID. And then 12% of them do not have a DDSN open case. So remember we talked about last month with the new process, we kind of have these people who go on the waiting list and their case gets closed. Then it takes a bunch of time to get them back open if they want to enter services. But we kind of put in a process to deal with those people a little earlier on. Typically, those tend to be children that are in early intervention, right? So a kid gets open in early intervention, their name goes on the waiting list. For whatever reason, their case closes out of early intervention, but they remain on the waiting list. For the children who are on the waiting list, almost 67% of them are on more than one waiting list. Almost 11% of them already are in a DDSN waiver. So again, they're kids who are participating in the community supports waiver who are waiting on the ID waiver. And 18% of them don't have a DDSN open case. This next statistic is something that's pretty significant. And it's that almost 72% of the children that are waiting on a waiver slot have active Medicaid. So for children under the age of 21, regular state plan Medicaid provides for a large array of services, many more services than it does for adults, right? So really the only ongoing service in waivers that children need and can get is like respite and in-home supports. There are a couple one-time services like environmental mods or private vehicle mods that a child might need, But the vast majority of children's needs can be met through regular Medicaid. If they need personal care, state plan Medicaid pays for it. If they need incontinence supplies, state plan Medicaid pays for it. If they need nursing, state plan Medicaid pays for it, right? So and almost 72% of the kids that are on the list are already eligible for Medicaid and have access to those services. In the next slide, I tried to show you the growth of the waiver waiting list over the past 3 years. The first year I used February 2019, and the reason I did that is because that's when we started tracking it, right? So that was kind of the first data set that I had. So we had 10,125 unduplicated people on the waiver waiting list in February of 2019. If you fast forward to May of 2021, we're up to 14,241, right? So there are some reasons for that. And the next slide kind of talks about some contributing factors. So the first thing that's happened in the last couple of years is the coronavirus, right? It's happened, it has caused a lot of things to change within the service delivery system. So there was a Families First Coronavirus Response Act that went into effect on March 20th of 2020. In that act, what happened was it protected all Medicaid beneficiaries from being terminated from services, right? So there's kind of this twofold thing going on. People who are enrolled in waivers can't be disenrolled in waivers for any reason other than they request to be enrolled, they get admitted to a Medicaid long-term care facility, or they pass away. Any other reason, they don't get disenrolled. So in normal years, we have kind of this regular attrition of people that come out of the waiver and then new people go in. And because the Families First Coronavirus Act has really slowed the number of people who attrition out, there's not a lot of people who are going in their place, right? The other thing that's happened is not only can people not get disenrolled from the waiver, but people can't lose regular Medicaid eligibility. So one of the reasons that people get disenrolled from the waiver is that their Medicaid eligibility stops, right? Maybe they become financially ineligible. You know, something happens and they no longer are eligible for Medicaid. Well, Medicaid is not taking people off the eligibility rolls, right? So you kind of have these two things going on. And we actually had a 41% decrease in the amount of slots that are being allocated through attrition. The other thing that has continued to happen is this inordinate amount of time that it takes to convert from slot award to receiving services. Remember that number I showed you on the second slide where it's taking people a really long time? So those people are kind of blocking people going in to the waivers. And then the last thing is that somewhere around the middle of 2019, I think it was July, DDSN made the decision to add every person who becomes eligible for DDSN to any waiting list that that person met the target criteria for. So prior to 2019, people only got added to waiver waiting lists when they asked for it, right? And sometimes they didn't know to ask for it. Sometimes a case manager might say, hey, you need to ask for it, but it was nothing that was automatic. So in July of 2019, the decision was made to just put everybody on the list and tell people we're putting you on the list and you tell us if you want to come off. So that's a good thing that happened, but it also has really increased the amount of people that are being added to the list. So some of the things that we're doing to try to improve the numbers on the list as much as we can is the new enrollment process that you guys approved last month, right? So with that process, one of the things we're doing is maintaining annual contact with people on the waiver waiting list. Prior to that process, people went on the waiting list and there was no regular contact to make sure that we removed people who needed to be removed along the way. We also through that annual contact, will be giving people regular information on Medicaid eligibility and the application process so that when people get waiver slots, or when people come up to process for enrollment, they already have Medicaid eligibility. Removing people who no longer want or need to be on the waiting list through that regular contact, and then preparation at regular intervals so that people are ready to enroll when a slot is awarded. So that whole idea of pulling people early and processing them before we give them a slot, we hope is going to cut down some of the time. The other thing that we're going to do is continue manual efforts to reduce people who've been pending for a long period of time. We have had a problem with people with that number of days that people are pending. And so there's been some work since August 2020 from the central office level where we follow up on people who have been pending waiver services. They have a slot, but they're not yet enrolled for more than 6 months. And we've actually been able to cut that number by about 50%. So we're going to continue to do that as we roll out this new process. Questions?
If we hypothetically, and it's not particularly hypothetical actually, but it's very possible that we could add, say, 10 waiver slots to the fund. If this commission found a way to fund, say, hypothetically 10 waiver slots over the next month or so, how long would it take for those waiver slots to be actually allocated and somebody to actually start using them?
Yeah, so I think the issue that we have right now is there has been a bottleneck because of these pending slots. Once we get a little bit of time behind the new initiative, we'll have people ready to enroll within 60 days, I'm sorry. So I think at that point, it'll be a lot faster, but for right now, it's not, I don't have a time frame. I think the only time frame I have is the average days pending, which is 343, right? I will say that as we look for the end of the Families First Coronavirus Act, right? So remember how I said one of the reasons that we've not had a lot of movement is there's not a lot of attrition.
Right.
When that act is lifted, there's this list of people that we know about that is likely going to need to be disenrolled, and then a whole pack of slots is going to need to come in behind it. That's going to cause a bottleneck, right? But you're going to have that happen. The other thing is there's a whole other group of people who we don't know about that may lose Medicaid eligibility at the end of that act. And those people will also likely need to be disenrolled. So there could be some, we're hoping that there's going to be some time to prepare for that to happen, because that number of enrolled, meaning people getting slots, and funded, meaning people that we have money for, might get bigger before it gets smaller. So,
when do we have an anticipated date on the end of that act? Is there a date on that?
So my understanding is that the act will end on the last day of the quarter in which the public health emergency is lifted. Right? So they look at calendar quarters. If the public health emergency was lifted today, it would end June 30th, right? But if the public health emergency ends on July 2nd, then it'll end September 30th. So, there's a little wiggle room. The other thing is, between us and the Medicaid agency, because they have all of this times 1,000 that they're going to have to work with. They have all their waivers plus all the people who, they've not lost Medicaid eligibility. I am certain that there will be some level of effort and decisions about how to roll it all up, because you really just have to, figure out how to mindfully plan for it.
So what we're saying, to get this straight in my head, is that even if we funded 10 slots tomorrow or next week, which is realistic, we could do next month, we wouldn't change anything until this act is over.
You would give out if you funded 10 slots tomorrow, I could assign 10 slots to the first 10 people on the waiver waiting list. I could take them off, right? But I can't tell you how long it would take for each of those 10 people to actually get into services because there are 10 people who haven't been prepared for enrollment. So I don't know if person one has Medicaid or not, or if person one wants the waiver, or if person one lives in the state of South Carolina, for that matter.
We could find those 10 though.
Correct.
And we could.
We could take them off the waiting list,
Right.
which is what,
we could decrease the waiting list at that time.
correct.
Right. Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the main thing I'm getting at.
Is there a motion
Anyway,
we
go
need
ahead,
on
sorry.
this? It says motions, I wasn't sure. Okay, I'm sorry. I forget you're not the chairman anymore.
It may be helpful, and I'm not really suggesting telling you guys what to do, but it may be helpful if y'all see these enterprise reports again for a while, again, like you were seeing them every month. And we stopped giving them to you, I think, because you requested that we stop giving them to you. So, that would be information at least that you would get on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was sort of my observation and question. So one of the major policy initiatives of this commission in that 16, 17, 18 timeframe was getting this number down. That was a huge point of emphasis for the chair who served before me.
And we did for a little while.
Right. Yeah, and we put a lot of work into getting that down.
Sure.
And again, I understand it's a complicated issue. Just because you're on the waiting list, there's a lot of people on the waiting list who are getting services, who are being well taken care of. So it's a complicated issue. But one of the reasons why I brought it back up was we hadn't heard about it because other things were going on. We've been focused on fee for service, which again will have an impact on things. But I think it is important to realize that when we look at the numbers, I mean, it was a huge point of pride for this commission that at one point in time, we had that CS waiver down below a year.
Right.
That was a big deal for us. That was something that we worked really hard for. We told the legislature, if you give us money, we're going to get people off the waiting list. We're going to get them into services. And that was a big accomplishment. I see that number back up over 3 years, particularly on the CS side. Obviously, IDRD is always going to be a little bit harder, but I will tell you from the standpoint of where we have placed emphasis before, that's something that I think that we need to be aware of, because that is people, there are people on that waiting list who are sitting there for years not getting services.
Correct.
And the list we knew was going to be getting bigger and bigger. We knew from the addition of a lot of stuff related to autism that list was going to get bigger, from our population growth that it was going to be getting bigger. And so this is actually why I asked for this update, because we hadn't seen it in a while. And it's something that we as a commission, I think, need to be very aware of. I think, again, it was a huge point of emphasis before. It has not been as much of a point of emphasis because we knew that there were still services, but that number is getting very high again. And it's something that I think we as a commission need to be aware of. And I agree that I would ask that we get regular updates on this number because we want to push that number as low as we can.
One of the other
does appear
things
that
is,
it has
go ahead.
progressively, if you look through the years, it has progressively snuck back up there.
Yep.
And so that's something we probably do.
And I think those attrition numbers have a lot to do with that. So at a couple of the listening sessions, I heard some providers talk about addressing the waiting list. And although that 10% FMAP can't be used for like long-term money, we do know that there is this subset of people who are likely going to come out of the waiver when the Families First Coronavirus Act lifts. So there might be opportunity to put some people in kind of in anticipation of that. Right. And, I don't think it's a 1-for-1 because there's a lot of contributing factors to the list that we have of people that might need to be disenrolled. Some of them are there because they're not getting services right now because they're not comfortable going back to the day program, right? So those people likely, when the rubber meets the road, will stay in the waiver. They're not going to be disenrolled because they'll get back into services. But for some of those people, they are going to drop out.
Barry? you have a question?
Technically, we can fund waivers with some of this money, and hopefully we'll be doing that. Since we get the rubber meets the road, that's what my point of what I was saying was, that we can fund some of those slots and we should fund some additional slots. We actually have 3 years before we have to spend this money.
Right.
That we're talking about. So we could fund those slots for 3 full years.
Right.
And should, because that gets the waiting list down. I mean, it doesn't actually get people services, which is an example of why money is not always the answer. You know, just because we funded 1,000 slots right now, don't mean all the people would come off the waiting list, because there's lots of other things that have to be done. So people need to realize money is not always the answer to everything. But that is a very important thing for this money that we are spending, to me, to try to get the waiting list down through that way. And what I think quite a portion of that money should be spent on.
And just to agree, I mean, there's always capacity that you have to build up. That's one of the biggest issues, is you can give somebody money, but if there's nobody to provide the services, or they've got to spin up their own, I mean, that was something. But when we go back to the legislature to ask for money to reduce this, we got to show that if you give us money, we turn that into people getting services.
So, and that's the whole idea behind trying to come up with a process to prepare people for enrollment, is that when money is available and they say you have 100 slots, we don't have 100 people that we're trying to contact for the first time so that they sit into slots and kind of take up space and create a bottleneck. If we've got this list of people over here that's ready, right? Then we give 100 slots, and within 60 days, we can get those 100 people enrolled.
Well, and it goes back to fee for service, because if they're just sitting there and they're not generating any services, people aren't getting.
Right.
I mean, it definitely links together with what we want to do. If we're good at fee for service and getting people paid, then the capacity will grow naturally, because people will see there is a need there.
Sure.
So.
Very clearly. Thank you very much. Could you say that again, sir? Yes, sir.
All right. Is there any other questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Who feels the pain? I mean, if you're on a list for 3 years, I don't see the list being prioritized in any way, but somebody's having more pain down here at the bottom of the list than somebody up here who's ready to get off the list. Do we prioritize it, or?
So the different waivers have different abilities for people to get what we call reserved capacity, which means I don't have to get on the list. I can just get a slot, right? So people for example, people in the IDRD world who are in critical circumstances, life-threatening circumstances, can get a slot through reserve capacity, even if they're number 10,000 on the list, right? There's also some other options for reserve capacity, like people who are enrolled in CS whose needs change and they can't fit their services within the cap, or people who are being discharged from long-term care facilities. So that's how people who are in extraordinary circumstances end up getting into the waiver without being on the waiting list for a really long time. So there is some level of priority, but if you don't meet a reserve capacity group, and there's different reserve capacity for each of the waivers, like I can provide you guys some of that information in the future if you'd like it. But other than those reserved capacity categories, it's first come, first serve. So whoever applied first, right? First one off.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there any motions that need to be made with regards to this report?
Thank you, guys.
Being done, thank you. All right. Constance, did you know of anything that needed to be handled with regards to that? Okay. All right. Now we're going to call on Mr. Malley to do our band B&I issue and the band change and outlier recommendations.
Good morning. particularly to make sure that nobody was hurt from a residential service standpoint, was to restart the band increase and outlier process, which had been dormant for 3 years due to funding. So far, we've had 38 requests. We've had 1 approved at an annual cost of $18,000, 7 denied, and I'm presenting 19 today for your decision. And we have 11 pending. The 19 that I'm presenting today, we're going to recommend that we approve 9 and deny 10. These 9 will have a total annual cost of $251,000. And just to give you a little bit about our methodology, we meet every Friday. We look at the proposals that come in, and the most significant criteria is the provider has to demonstrate that they have provided increased funding first before we justify the outlier band increase. So they really have to show that they've demonstrated the use of these funds, and it's not just kind of a wish list. We look at it. We have people from operations, finance. I think we've had internal audit to it, and they look at it, apply the criteria, and make these determinations. And so what I'm presenting before you today is attachment A. And it looks like a complicated chart, and we have initials there in order to not put anybody's name in a public document. But if you look in the green section on the last column, it'll say annualized increase approved, $129,927. And if you look at the next group over, orange, we want outliers approved, totaling $121,706, pertaining to 2 cases. So combined, they are $251,000 for 9 individuals. And I have Rufus here for any questions beyond what I just said.
So these are people we're moving from one band to another.
So we're moving 7 people from band G's to H's, and we have 2 outliers, which is basically you're in a band, most likely an H band, and you're getting an increase.
You get an increase in funding.
Yes, on top of your age.
You have the justification.
Yes.
For those increases, and we're doing both of those at the same time.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion on the floor?
I so move that we.
Wait, push your button.
I so move that we would approve the 9 that's been recommended to us to approve to move from one band to another, and or the outlier that has been that we can justify.
Do we have a second? All right, any questions or discussion regarding this motion?
Do we need to formally disapprove the other 10?
I think our specific recommendation is approve the 19 preliminary staff recommendations contained on attachment A.
Right, which is 9 approvals and 10 disapproved. So the motion that we've got pending only addresses the 9 approvals. And so my question is staff is actually asking for an answer to both.
We need to do both.
Right, okay.
Let's do the approval first, if that's okay, and then we'll go back and do the denial. All right. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes carry, and those are approved. All right, is there another motion on the floor?
I make a motion that we deny the other 10. Is that the right number?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's also, sorry. Deny the other 10 requests due to lack of justification.
Second on the floor? All right, is there any discussion regarding those 10? Is there an appeal process?
I guess they can resubmit.
All right, any other questions? Are you ready for the vote? Okay, all in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes carry, the motion will carry. Thank you, Ms. Manley, appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, anything else you want to update us
Nope,
on?
I'm waiting for my next turn.
What, you're next to go? All right, we're gonna call Mr. McBurney to do, our legislative update.
Okay, I'll be quick with this. We're at the end of a first year of a two-year legislative session. So What the process we're in right now is there's no new legislation coming forward, but they're cleaning up. And they can take up legislation in the interim as well, and they'll do limited amounts of that, but they usually don't do a lot of committee work in the interim. So we're entering a period where there's going to be very little legislative movement. One bill that we do have hanging out there, there's a conference committee that's going to meet sometime in the next few weeks, I imagine. They had a meeting scheduled, and they postponed it on House Bill 3244, which is an employment first oversight commission. We're involved in that, and that we would sit on the commission. So that needs to be worked out going forward, and I'll keep you updated on that. The other big piece that they're working on right now is finishing up the budget for the year, and they're a little bit behind because of the COVID situation, but also because they got new money in the middle of the budget process. New revenue figures came in the middle of the budget process, and as you'll recall, we got almost none of our requests fulfilled in the House version, but as a Senate, they were able to figure in the new money. They funded our respite increase and our residential rate increase, as well as the coastal power grid and the money, the transfer we do for the Greenwood Genetics Center. That stayed in the House. The House took up the budget again, and that stayed in there. They also, the Senate, as you recall, put in a 2% state employee pay raise. The House always gets, they never get to one up the pay raise. So they were happy this year that they were able to add 1% to the pay raise. So the pay raise is now 3% in the budget, and that is basically what affects us in the budget. We also, House was also, thanks to Nancy Rumbaugh, her ability to get the first fill slots in. That's going to be another transfer of 1.8 million to us that will come from HHS in the budget. So they were able to include that. They're meeting in the conference committee right now. Monday they expect to take up the budget and approve it. Being that the two, for our purposes, the two houses were similar, we expect that the final legislative budget will look like that, and those increases will be funded.
What was the lady able to get us $1.8 million?
It's a transfer.
Did you say slots?
First fill slots. It's an accounting transfer from HHS to us. It has to be approved in the budget every year. It wasn't in the Senate didn't put it in there. It's an accounting transfer that the Senate didn't put in their version, and the House was able to put it in.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And pending any questions,
Are there any questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much for filling in. We do appreciate it.
Awesome. I want to welcome Chairman Miller to the Legislative Committee. Look forward to
Spell that welcome.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to talk about the fiscal year 2022 community contracts with Mr. Mount.
All right. All right, well, you can sit back and relax for a second, because the complexity starts. And my job this year is to try to simplify the summer complexity of building our budget. When we go to fee for service, hopefully as soon as possible, we won't even do this in June. We'll just have one spending plan, and that'll be it. The reason we have to do this is primarily tied to the capitated funds, which have to have contractual requirements around them. And also we just have a historical pattern. When people get qualified as provider, they come through a fixed bid contract, and they agree to all the directives, and they agree to everything. Okay, now that we've qualified them, each year we give them another contract that kind of wraps them with the conditions of how to serve. And there's a little bit of redundancy there. So the reason we have to do this every June is we give these contracts, they start July 1st, and the vast majority of them, a very small amount of money, are the service providers that provide services based on the choice of our individuals. So when we're approving these contracts, we're not approving a fixed amount. We're just approving, we're approving, give you example, 58 residential providers to provide services. And their contract amount, from the board perspective, is just the number of people they're serving as of May 1st. That can change throughout the year. So we're really not promising them anything other than an opportunity to continue serving, as well as to compete for new clients and keep the ones you have. But to set up the summer, what I did here was I broke down our budget process into 2 phases. Today's phase is to take our ongoing contracts for services that are not guaranteed for residential, or I make a distinction for our day programs for our residential individuals, because they're still in the capitated model. If you're an at-home individual with a budget, you're fee for service today. So you're not going to be included in these contracts. So we're starting to separate people away from these contracts. And then obviously case management, early intervention, and then we'll get into some of these other contracts. But after we approve today, hopefully, that's when the real budgeting starts, because now what we have to do is between now and the Finance Committee in July, hopefully the state budget will be passed. Hopefully we'll get, which I think I'm very confident that the House and Senate are really going to give us hopefully $10 million in residential improvements, increases, and $7 million in respite. That's a very good increase. Our job would be then to take these funds and propose how we're going to implement them. And then secondly, any of our spending categories that you see here, there's going to be variations from this year's actual to next year's estimated. For example, this year's actual at-home day programs was suppressed by about $22 million. So on here, you'll see a lower number. Next year, we're going to have to estimate it's going to go up. Is it going to go back to 100%? Is it going to go back to 80%? We'll have to give some estimate and why. And so there will be increases when we propose going forward. And then the third component of going forward is the most important, which is we'll be able to estimate if we are going to have a budget surplus. Plus, we'll be able to tell you what our carry forward is. I can tell you right now, our carry forward is still hanging at about $50 million. So we will have available funds for opportunities to improve services, and that is where we will need your input. So between now and the Finance Committee in July, the first 2 components we're going to deal with, and then from that point in time till August, we'll have a whole month, and that's when we'll be soliciting your input as to, hey, do we put $50 million in the bank and do nothing? Do we spend it? How do we use it? And what complicates those decisions is the fact that we're making the decision on the $42 million for 10% FMAP. So we're in an unusual situation where we actually have tremendous amount of funds to consider how to use them in the short term and long term. So we're gonna have a challenging budget season, but just to give you the platform of the multi-step process, that's what we're looking for. And but today, I just want to take care of the existing contracts so that on July 1st, they're ready to go. And the contracts that you're approving are primarily wraparound contracts of how to do it, not necessarily guaranteeing an amount. And I do want to take a moment on each one, just so that you know what you're voting on. With most importantly on attachment E, there are some contracts in there that are literally specific contracts that you will have to understand to approve. So if you go to page 2, you can see a summary. I won't go into it, but we're going to be approving $422 million of contracts today. I tried to, I want to thank Deborah Leppert. Deborah's in the back. You most know Deborah. Deborah can slice and dice information better than anybody in this building. And I tell you, I sent you an email. These charts really do give you some context of what we do. It shows you who the EI providers are. It shows you who the case managers are. It shows you how much we spend for services. Then I would ask you to look at Schedule F, most importantly. The Schedule F shows you the amount of money we spend by service. So as you come into an agency like this that you're responsible for fiduciary oversight, it gives you a good glimpse or a good framework to understand where is our money going and for what services. So let me go through, obviously attachment A is residential, B is for day contracts, C is case management, E is early intervention. And let's go to attachment E, which is page 9. And these contracts are differentiated, that these are contracts, meaning that when we commit to them, we are going to pay for a service provided. And I will be asking Gary to comment a little bit because we've been working this list down over the years. Because it was a huge list many, many years ago, and we've been working down a lot of the legacy type transactions, and we got it down to, I think, a reasonable measure. The first one is $8.3 million for Greenwood Genetics. That we have really no discretion there. They're funds that are passed through to us. It's approximately $4.9 million, and what we do is we estimate the federal match that they get on some of the services, so it turns out to be about an $8.3 million contract. It is still a contract with us. We still have to prove it. Yes, yes. Actually, their billing is so much improved. What we want to do is get into August and check their cost reports to make sure that their costs are okay. And then I think we can approach them so that it could be a transaction where there's no hanging chads. I don't want them to get in there and find out they have cost report problems. The next two categories, individually family support and respite. I mean, these are state funds that we put primarily in the boards to give great discretion to our boards to provide services to those that are not in the waiver. We have a lot of people out there that are DDSN eligible, but they're not in a waiver for one reason or another. These are like emergency funds for respite to take care of their needs. Then we have fiscal agents for self-directed services. We have moved all of our fiscal agent services to Charles Lee, and we made that move last month. And I was told yesterday that all but 3 were paid on time this week, and we had 3 that are going to get paid this Friday. So that's 3 out of over 600. Other special contracts. The first 2 you'll see there: Disability Board of Charleston, day program expenses, and Chesco day program expenses. These are legacy mortgages that we've been paying on for probably, I'm guessing, 8 to 10 years. And at the time when they were originated, DDSN provided a lot of grants to boards, and I think it was a year, possibly beginning the recession or some cash situation where they decided instead of giving a cash grant, they would get a loan and we'd pay the loans. Prior boards have advise staff to maintain these legacy situations, but don't make any more of them. And this list used to be maybe 7 or 8. Now it's down to 3. So these two combined, about 137,000. There's about 600,000 in principal left. And I think one of the considerations that we have to have for our spending plan is, given our financial reserves, do we want to retire this debt to clear our books up? And I think that's an option. I have them itemized. They combine about 600 grand. 124,000 on Rich Lex. This is a situation where Rich Lex is a traditional board. This agency has traditionally provided administrative buildings, day programs for providers. They had not had one, and at the time we were going to buy them one, but the market was such that the decision was go ahead and rent because there wasn't the right space. There was some reason not to buy, and we've been providing rent for 10, 12 years, and I think that we were addressing that to titrate them down off of that prior to COVID, but when COVID hit, we didn't address it during COVID, and my recommendation is to maintain it for 1 year and let us work with Rich Lex this year to come up with a plan to titrate it down, because our direction in the past has been, both from the commission and legislative oversight, is get the playing field as balanced you can for everybody out there, and so we're going to work this one through.
You say titrated down, how far down are you trying to get it? Because it should be way down, because this is not fair to other providers, in my opinion.
I
It's an
agree.
issue that we've had for a long time that I haven't addressed, but it needs to be addressed.
I agree 100%. The $12,000 is a unique situation. I don't want to know all the details, but the person that's getting these state funds for apartment support had literally been through all of our services at ICS in the community and could not serve this person for a variety of reasons. And they've come up with this situation where we're using state funds to supplement an apartment for this person. And this person is stable. And so for years we revisit it and we say, look, we've tried everything else and this is kind of a unique solution. So we maintain it. It's just state funds for an individual who's eligible for services to help with apartment. Now it is an exception. We wouldn't want to start that again, but the person's stable. We have a hard time destabilizing. And then the last four are just Special Olympics, USC Center for Disability Research Attendant Care Training. They provide all of our training for our attendant care for self-directed services. The second one for $162,000 is primarily, we have an employee here. There's a contractor from USC that's a big part of this, and the other is just some training contracts. And lastly, the $111,000 is for the physician that we have on contract from USC that serves as the agency's medical advisor. So there are the contracts. Other than this last page, they are service oriented that are rollover based on choice. And attachment E, there are some discretionary decisions in there. Greenwood is not a discretionary decision. We need to pass that through. So we're really looking at approximately almost $3 million in these contracts that are contracts that we are providing for services, not necessarily a choice. Gary? Oh, you have a question or? Okay, so that's my presentation. I know there'll be questions on how this ties into our spending plan, and I'll open the floor.
Are there questions or motion regarding this issue, or how should we handle this?
Well, I mean, I didn't get an answer to my question just now. I'm sorry to say.
That's
I don't
okay.
think. What percentage down are we going to, if we approve Lexington for another year to rent a facility for them, what percentage down are we going to get it down to in the next year so that this is more equitable for other?
I would say that the prior state director handled those negotiations with Rich Lex. And when I picked up the budget here, I think my position is we don't have to approve it today. Quite frankly, we do not have to approve it. I'm recommending to approve it in order. We have $50 million of cash reserves. This has been unaddressed, and it needs to be titrated down. But we can put all kinds of caveats on it. We can pay 6 months and stop and titrate it down mid-year.
Well, I mean, and we could also look at, for example, a situation to where we approve it pending 6 months, the director comes back to us with.
That would be a great idea.
Or you come back to us after you've negotiated with them to see where they are. And that way we can possibly move them forward and set them up in a different situation, or they set themselves up.
That sounds better.
That sound okay?
That's improvement.
Okay. Well, I mean, and would that work with y'all? That would give y'all time to kind of.
Unlike the first two, which were mortgages that we agreed to pay for, we obligated ourselves to go the duration. This arrangement was, you can't pay rent in perpetuity. So we have to do something. And I think the time is now, and it's reasonable to come back in 6 months with a solution. That's a very reasonable approach.
Okay.
I would, yeah, that.
Especially since we haven't negotiated at this point with them.
Right.
You know?
I agree.
Okay. All right. Let's discuss how Gary, I'm gonna need a little guidance on this one. This is brand new to me.
I mean, in the past, typically what we've done is we've had a motion to approve the contracts as presented, as opposed to trying to deal with I mean, that's why they put together the listing
Right.
that comes essentially the most comprehensive one is the one at the end where they
Right.
just go, agency by agency.
Right.
But we have not in the past approved agency by agency. It has been as presented, we're approving these contracts.
Right.
And in fact, that would be the motion that I would make with the additional proviso that with regard to the Rich Lex rental payment, the legacy rental payment that's been going on for a decade now, I think.
At least. Madam Chair, I would so move that.
Well, we're not finished.
I was making that motion, that with that proviso that be revisited in 6 months with a plan for that reduction or a clear statement of that reduction. That would be my motion.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, now let's have some discussion. Barry, do you have some discussion?
No, I don't have any, I mean, that sounds good to me. I think that'll mean that in 6 months we'll be negotiating their decrease over hopefully another 6-month period.
I have a question.
Sure, Robin.
On attachment F, the second item says Child Day, and I just was quite curious kind of what that was.
Child Day is 2 legacy programs, one in Charleston and one in Anderson County, that are state funded. And at one point, Deborah was schooling me this morning, so stand by, Deborah. The system had a lot of daycare programs in it, and then they all shrunk naturally. And then somewhere during the, I guess, belt tightening times of 2008, 2009, the agency here decided to cut those 2. And there was such a hue and cry and involvement by members of the General Assembly that they asked for us to consider, maintaining these 2 programs because they were very robust in the communities. It has been approved ever since. And this morning, we have some due diligence to make sure that there's nobody there and that we're paying money. And they are robust programs that we continue to pay. And I would consider these legacy state funded programs that
There's Charleston and where?
Anderson County.
Anderson, okay. Yes.
Under the medical policy advisor, that's almost a 60% FTE for a pediatrician. Do you need somebody that frequently to give policy advice?
I would have to, we use them both on the policy side as well as the operational side. I'll let Rufus, she reports to Rufus. Rufus handles our contract. We'll talk a little bit about that, Rufus. Yeah. Yes.
Rufus needs to come to the microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. She also has responsibilities for determining a couple of eligibility decisions. So she's a licensed psychiatrist. So it's a value added role.
So it's fee for service for them.
That's sort of contract with.
No, we pay them big money.
So it's actually, she supports policy and operations.
So the fee for the contract is associated with her current rate of employment and the amount of time she's taken every week. So that's how that comes up, and psychiatrists are
Okay, so it is figured.
very
Fee
experienced.
for service, but we pay it under contract.
Yeah, it's paid to, the medical.
We would not be able to get the level of expertise if we didn't have this agreement.
Right. So it's kind of like a health agency not having a medical director. She's really kind of takes the role of the medical director. But as far as on the functions of that role, she does some things with death reviews. She does some things with what we call level of care, which is required for admission to some programs. And then she also does kind of like Rufus is saying, some staffings for eligibility.
You're
So
saying this is a one-person contract.
yes, it's a one-person contract.
Any other questions?
And there are providers outside the shore.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't.
For that not, okay, that's good to know.
We can't.
Okay.
It would have to be a-
Say again?
Right, so the last thing, going back, that was you're discussing what Robin was asking about,
Yeah.
daycare centers. So in other words, the legislature said this money is for those, there's a proviso, okay.
Yes, sir. Those are those 2 child care senators are covered in provisos. So to
So the
remove,
legislature has
so
given
to
us money
remove
to
funding
say,
for that, we
pay
would
that.
have to go and get, we would have to get approval through the budget.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
Now you
That's,
just spelled well.
That's right.
And they also serve people too, so.
you just
That's good.
spelled somebody knows somebody.
All right, anything else? Any other discussion regarding the information that Mr. Malley has presented to us? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we're going to take a vote. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, the ayes carry. These are approved. Okay, let's see, what's next? Ms. Beck, we're going to bring you back up to talk about Family Support Network solicitation.
So, Madam Chairperson or woman, I'm not sure what's socially appropriate at this point. I'm just asking for a.
Stephanie works.
You get some formality. I just wanted to ask for a little bit of direction because Commissioner Blackwood did a very nice job of presenting in section 9A1 of your agenda, this Family Support Network grant, and you all have already approved the multi-year solicitation for this. I was told that the Finance and Audit Committee had asked for a commission presentation on this, so I made a little brief. If you all like that, I'd be glad to present it. But I think you've already approved it, so I just am asking for direction.
Okay,
So you want direction on what specifically?
Well, she's asking if
Do you
does
want
she
me-
need to approve something does she need to give a presentation on something we've already approved? I don't think that's necessary.
so,
You know, but I do appreciate the level of detail because I was
yes.
curious who some of the providers were that contract with to provide these support services.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Sure. So that's all in tab 13. And again, you know, we're addressing needed services that DDSN doesn't provide and doing it with the experts of these nonprofit disability organizations. They're extensions of their national. And so currently it's Brain Injury Association, Family Connections, and Spinal Cord Injury. Of course, with the solicitation, you have to submit a proposal and have it judged and accepted. So that's just my snippet for y'all. I'd be glad to talk about it more if you'd like to take time.
Okay, are there any questions further regarding this program from Ms. Beck? Hearing none, we're going to move ahead. Thank you so much, Susan. Next, we have Mr. Pat Malley again doing our financial update.
Okay, this is the financial update you see every month. And as we exit the capitated model, we're going to have to revise this because it creates flaws in our expense reporting. If you look at our spending plan here, it's about $750 million. The actual expenditures are going to be maybe close to $700 million, $50 million, like we're under budget. That under budget is a combination of being under budget, but it's also a combination of as our at-home services left the capitated bands and we bill them and we pay for them directly. Any of these services that are billed through HHS, we just pay the match. And this year, we're only paying 23 cents on the dollar. So from a spending plan perspective, we're budgeting 100% expenditure. From a cash perspective, we're only paying 23 cents. The reason for that is HHS claims the reimbursement because they pay the bill. So what we have to do going into next year is every month when you see this report, you're going to see the expenditures, plus you're going to see an adjustment column where we're going to calculate what that difference is when we pay the match so that we have an apples to apples comparison on our spending plan. So the good news is we're way under, you know, but we're under a good part of it because of this accounting issue that is just getting wider and wider when we deal with paying state match to HHS. So starting in August, you'll see July, and you'll see that gap analysis so you can see it better closer. We track it closer to spending. The most important thing this doesn't capture is the revenue side. And the calculation we did for the end of May was we anticipate having cash reserves in at least $50 million going forward. And that is my presentation.
Okay. Do we need to do a motion to accept the financial update? Do I hear one? Go ahead.
So move that we approve the financial update.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on this matter, on the budget? Or I mean, on the report, financial report? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Hearing none, the ayes carry. This is approved. Thank you, Pat. All right. Well, we have reached that wonderful time at the end of our meeting where we need to probably take a little break, probably 15 minutes, and then go into executive session to discuss the matters. Constance, what were the matters again? I don't have that in front of me. It was personnel matter, I know. Yeah. On the- Okay.
Internal auditor position and the next steps in the state direction.
Okay. So that's what we're going to be discussing in executive session, but we will come back to close out the meeting as soon as that is over. Do I have a motion to enter? All right, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of us exiting into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Hearing none, ayes carry. We will go into executive session and we'll be back to close out the meeting.
Okay, this is Gary Lamel. It is 1:20. It was pointed out by Commissioner Malfris that under our bylaws, thank you, that I had acted in error in transferring the gavel so quickly to Commissioner Rollins, and that apparently I'm still in this gig until the end of the meeting today. So although she handled it completely appropriately, and I don't think there was any change. I don't think there would have been any difference at all in how she handled it, that I would have done anything differently. So administratively, I'm going to handle this last little bit. So we rose from executive session at 1:20. That during executive sessions, we received information, but we did not make any decisions. We did not have any motions. No votes were taken.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Absolutely. Recognizing Commissioner Blackwood, please.
My motion is to have DDSN instruct our HR resource handling the hiring process to inform the candidates that are currently in the pool of candidates that we are considering, to let them know our schedule for the next phase of the interview process.
We have a second to that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, that motion passes. And then the last item then on the agenda is the setting of the next regular meeting will be, it's got July 21st. I thought it was the 15th. The 15th is the third Thursday.
Right, it is the 15th,
Says-
so it's not 21st,
Right.
written on
And the 21st is a Wednesday anyway, according to, yeah. So anyway, all right. So the next regular meeting will be July 15th. That is the third Thursday of the month.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we add to that meeting an executive session to discuss personnel matters.
And we can set the agenda for it. I don't think we
Okay.
need a motion to do
All right.
that.
I would like to make sure that we go ahead and make sure there is an executive session added to that session. And if so, Commissioner Balfour, wouldn't you like to have lunch ordered in that day? Since we're-
Yes, we'll add that into the motion, yes.
We'll bring that to staff's attention. I'm sure they will take care of it for us to add that onto the agenda and to make those preparations for food. Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
Sorry, I just had to add a little humor in there.
Very nice, thank you.
Barry's constantly looking for lunch.